Hello, and welcome to this edition of TETFund, The Paradigm Shift. I am Stanley Bentu. Leadership is one of the most important, though difficult, roles that any human can ever embark on. The best leaders are committed to their values, and they use them as their primary decision-making criteria. They always begin by identifying their personal purpose and top values. Then, they are very vocal about them so people can anticipate what they want to achieve. Once a leader has identified his or her personal purpose and values, they consider the organization's mission and align those values to the mission using the best of their competences. Now, this is the task that has been set before the Executive Secretary of TETFund, architect Sonny Echono. He hasn't shied away from being vocal about his values and the mission that he intends to accomplish at TETFund. In this edition of The Paradigm Shift, we present an exclusive interview with the Executive Secretary as he shares with us not only his goals and aspirations, but also his philosophy and the roadmap that the intervention agency will follow over the next 5 years. Now, we're going to do all of that over the next 20 minutes or so, but first, let us try to understand the journey that forged the man at the helm of affairs at TETFund. Let us meet architect Sonny Echono, the man himself, in his own words.
I spent most of my adult life practicing my profession and also working in the Federal Civil Service. By training, I'm an architect, and I had a very extensive involvement in that aspect of my life. And I was offered the opportunity of doing a bit of that when I joined the Federal Service way back in January of 1987. I spent 18 years in the Ministry of Works and getting involved in developing projects both at home and abroad, and also implementing policies around housing, maintenance, building codes, and so on. And thereafter, when the procurement reforms were introduced in the country, we were the first set of civil servants that we are more or less as guinea pigs selected to join the due process office. So that's reflected some kind of career change, mid-career change.
The introduction of public procurement reforms in Nigeria followed a World Bank Country Procurement Assessment Survey conducted in 1999, which established the link between poor and weak public procurement procedures and corruption, as well as its far-reaching negative consequences on national development, especially in the area of infrastructural development in Nigeria. The assessment report revealed that 60 kobo was being lost to underhand practices out of every $1 spent by government, and that an average of $10 billion was being lost annually due to fraudulent practices in the award and execution of public contracts through inflation of contract cost, lack of procurement plans, poor project prioritization, poor budgeting processes, lack of competition, and value for money and other kinds of manipulations of the procurement and contract award processes. In order to address the above shortcomings, the federal government initiated a public procurement reform as part of its economic reform agenda designed to restore due process in the award and execution of federal government contracts. This led to the setting up of the Budget Monitoring and Price Intelligence Unit, BMPIU, known as Due Process, in 2001, to implement the federal government's public procurement reform policy aimed at minimizing open abuses to known rules, processes, and standards in the award and execution of public sector contracts in Nigeria. Following the growing public demand that the reforms are sustained and institutionalized with legal backing, a public procurement bill was articulated in 2003 in 2004 by the leadership of the BMPIU and presented to the National Assembly. The Public Procurement Bill was thereafter passed by the National Assembly on the 30th of May 2007 and subsequently signed into law by Mr. President on the 4th of June 2007.
And thereafter, when the procurement reforms were introduced in the country, we were the first set of civil servants that we are more or less as guinea pigs selected to join the due process office. So that's reflected some kind of career change, mid-career change. And to ensure that that is done properly, I also went to take additional, I went back to school again. I had earlier done an MBA, then I went to Italy to study procurement management. And when I came back, I was the director and served in 5 different ministries as director of procurement before I was elevated to the rank of PAMSEC. Again, as permanent secretary too, I also served in 3 other ministries. I had had the experience of working as director in agriculture and rural development before then. So when I went back to agriculture as permanent secretary, it was something I was familiar with. And from there, I went to Ministry of Communications. Again, another new challenge in the sense that I was dealing more with modern developments, unfolding events, as it were, and younger people, because that space is more of a youth, if you like, sector. And then from there, I came to education. That was actually the core of producing the manpower needs of the national economy. So it's been a very rewarding experience. It's been very challenging too, and along the way, at least I picked one or two things that prepared me for this job.
When stepping into a leadership role, the most important thing to do is to find out what has worked and what has not worked. It's important to let people know that you want to learn from them first before making assumptions or trying to solve anything. Architect Echono has been occupied with wide consultations across all the stakeholders in the public tertiary education system and beyond over the past few weeks. The delivery of services, whether in public at large or to a target population, are always controlled by policies on some level. Policies are often modified to enhance the quality of services delivered. Architect Echono, in this interview with The Paradigm Shift, spoke in depth about his consultations and some of the core elements that will form the policy thrust of TETFund under his leadership. Take a look.
As I did promise when I took over, we are in the middle of consultations with the relevant stakeholders. I'm talking about the institutions at the 3 layers that we serve, the universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. And the other stakeholders who essentially are the staff unions that operate at this level. We have the academic staff, ASU, ASUP, COASU. Then we also have NASU, SANU, NAT. And only today I had meetings with 2 of such bodies. And this evening I also met with the Executive Secretary of the National Commission for Colleges of Education. Earlier I met with the Committee of Chairman of Governing Councils and also of Provosts. So there's been a lot of engagements. But I came with some ideas, and I have mentioned some of them. First, that we need to leverage on technology to deepen as well as improve the quality of curriculum and the learning experience that our kids have in our schools, to also make them more competitive on the global stage, because I do realize that Nigeria has comparative advantage in manpower development. And rather than see this as a cause that we are experiencing brain drain, we should be able to invest and leverage on it and also benefit from it.
The concept of the paradigm shift is defined as an epiphany by TETFund that providing infrastructure is very crucial to tertiary education in Nigeria. But it's insufficient if the aims and objectives of the fund as dictated by its enabling law are to be achieved. Something more needed to be done. The investment needed to be expanded to other areas that not only create a higher quality of graduates, but also firmly entrenches the academia as a solution to socio-economic problems. Architect Echono expresses the view that exporting raw materials alone will always leave Nigeria weak and vulnerable. For the nation to shatter the financial glass ceiling, it must industrialize. And the principal driver of industrialization is higher education.
A couple of years ago, in fact, a little longer than that now, we discovered that the remittances that we were even getting from our diaspora community exceeded how much we were earning from oil. And you see today now, if you look at what is coming in from the oil and gas sector compared to the subsidies we are paying, it's almost like a nil revenue. So the human capital that we are very good at, the agriculture that we have all the comparative advantage to do, are things that we need to focus to take this country to where we want it to be. And Nigerians are very intelligent people, very hardworking people, very creative people. So the knowledge economy, which again is the main area I think we should play in, is where the future lies. That knowledge economy, by definition, is based on your creative abilities, your ability to use new ideas, to innovate, to identify challenges, opportunities, and to solve them profitably. So it's something that will change the orientation of education completely in this country. We are earning very little from our agricultural produce because our value addition potential is very low. But we need to develop it. We must stop exporting cocoa and begin to make chocolates in this country. When you convert it, you add value. And that is where the earnings come from. Not exporting raw materials, not exporting unprocessed goods or produce, but those that have been processed, packaged, and you can now get true value for them.
Chocolate is a global $130 billion industry that relies on one key ingredient, cocoa. From bean to bar, the cocoa supply chain is a bittersweet one. The end product is something universally loved, but it also comes with a largely hidden human cost. Many cocoa farmers earn less than $1 a day. Farmers are often unable to bear the costs of cocoa farming, turning instead to child labor. Based on how much cocoa comes from West Africa, it is likely that most of the chocolates we eat have a little bit of Nigeria in them. Nigeria is ranked as the fourth largest cocoa producer in the world after Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Indonesia. Over 328,000 tons of cocoa was produced in 2020, and Nigeria is still unable to take full advantage of the cocoa industry like Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana in order to diversify its economy. Without farmers, both the cocoa and chocolate industries are likely to suffer from shortages, with domino effects and higher overall costs. Yet, they have little ability to influence prices at present. Farmers are among the lowest earners from a ton of sold cocoa, accounting for just 6.6% of the value of the final sale. Fortune Business Insights says that the global cocoa and chocolate market size was valued at $44.35 billion in 2019 and is projected to reach $61.34 billion by 2027. The essential lesson to learn here is that for Nigeria to benefit from its natural gifts, it has to build capacity in research and development, innovation, value addition through industrial products. Education is a tool to achieve all of this.
The Nigerian economy is huge. It is rated as the largest in Africa according to its gross domestic product. In spite of this, the country is home to a large number of people living in extreme poverty. And even those living above the poverty line find their efforts constantly challenged in a manner that makes them fearful of the life that they will live when they grow old. To ensure that Nigerians enjoy the benefit of coming from a nation with such a high GDP, we require a specific blend of the right kind of higher institution graduates. The fundamental design is already present and has been for many years. We have the colleges of education, who were established essentially to design curricula and ensure quality foundational education. And then there are the polytechnics, to develop the technically skilled workforce, and the universities as the hub of research and development and highly specialized pursuits. But for all this to work, there has to be a synergy that is carefully tailored and managed according to Nigeria's economic requirements. Architect Echono explains.
That is why the triple helix is one of the things my predecessor and I worked on, and I intend to take forward. We must make our citadels of learning relevant to our society through the linkages they have with our productive sectors, especially our industries. Structure, what we call the institutional framework for achieving that objective, are the supervisory agencies. So that's why we have NUC for universities, we have NBTE for our polytechnics, and the National Commission for Colleges of Education, as well as the ministry sitting on top of that. Then we also have inter-agencies, like JAMP, for example, that cuts across all three. The policy framework is simple. Pre-production of manpower is a chain. And you should start with, what are the needs of the national economy? How many people are we serving? We have a population of 200 million. Fine. You de-aggregate this population to the sectors that they each belong and the roles that each players play. Some will apply to the entire population, like food. Everybody eats. Like in the health sector, we all fall sick and we need doctors and nurses. But you should be able to determine, for an economy of 200 million people, how many doctors should we have? What is the doctor-patient ratio? We have international standards. When you determine that, you will ask yourself, how many are we producing? How many institutions are producing them? How many are we producing each year? How many are coming in from outside, the other institutions from other countries? How many of the ones we are producing are we losing to other countries that are offering them other conditions that are attractive, that will have this brain drain happening? So how many are left? That tells you what we describe as the skills gap. That is when you do that for all the various fields and areas and specializations, that's how you determine your manpower needs. It is also that those manpower needs that guide the policies around it, the priorities that we attach to each segment, which is why, for example, JAM will say, okay, we have a total of 1 million spaces in our tertiary institutions. Universities have maybe 700,000. Out of the 700,000 in our universities, first you have to compare the capacity. What do we have to produce? Then with how many do we need? And you now make policies to ensure that you are producing enough for your economy. If you find that in a particular area you are overproducing, you incentivize it, you discourage it. For the areas that you don't have enough people at all, you create additional incentives for people to now move into that area. The same thing, you can also use your wage bracket to try and also do that. Because if me and you know that a particular sector pays more than others, tendency is to want to gravitate toward that area. So there are so many devices that are available and tools for management that are available. But once you have made that decision, having the right environment, creating the right environment to produce those graduates is what education is all about.
One of the things that the Executive Secretary seeks to achieve with curriculum review is to build more graduates that will create jobs rather than those that will need jobs. It's important to note that some students engage in certain businesses to make ends meet while they study. But apparently, this isn't what the TETFund boss is referring to when he speaks about entrepreneurship. He is referring to something much more carefully pre-designed and organized.
What we got wrong in this country is the orientation. So we are focusing, and part of my priorities while I'm here is on entrepreneurship education, which is different from entrepreneurship as a vocation. When you, as a student, because your parents are not able to pay all your bills, decide to engage in extracurricular activities, weaving, sewing, baking, some even say recharge cards, or you operate a hairdressing salon. That is not entrepreneurship education. That is not even entrepreneurship in that context. It's extracurricular activity. Entrepreneurship education teaches you how to identify opportunities, teaches you how to move into that lucrative field of wealth creation.
So basically, it's
the mindset.
have training as a doctor.
Yes.
Entrepreneurship training teaches you how to use your training
exactly.
to generate wealth.
To generate wealth. Okay. How do you establish a hospital? How are you going to go into equipment manufacture? Are you going to go into all the related business opportunities around medicine that you studied? And there are many people who are very good doctors but can't actually manage their own hospitals because the orientation is not there. They've not been prepared for it. There are others who probably the challenge may not just be funding alone, but even being able to manage relationships and manage people, group dynamics and all of that. Then taking risks, being patient to see how you actually grow a business. Knowing when to invest, how. And the structures that you need to put in place to ensure that your business succeeds.
Entrepreneurship education does not just benefit those who are entering the fields of science, technology, and business. Students interested in arts, social science, and similar fields can also develop their imagination and learn how to apply creative thinking skills to real-world problems. In an age where children need a basic level of resilience, research has shown that entrepreneurial education has the likelihood to encourage a higher level of social and emotional well-being, as well as teaching habits and characteristics that those students need. Now, there is so much more to come from TETFund, and these tweaks are expected to have a huge impact on the institutionalization of research and development in Nigeria. And that is the paradigm shift. Join us again on the next edition of the program. But until then, thank you for stopping by. Good night.